work dishwashers to the point that I swear and walk away from them, so I can kind of see how it would work.
Okay, that's fair. I happen to be in a very old restaurant that I worked in 22 years ago. I went back to it to order some food just the other day, and everything was in the same spot. And I was like, yeah, that dishwasher that I used to work at is right around that corner, right over there. That's my room full of steam right over there.
You have to have consistency, and that's the thing. Always have it simple.
Well, I also pointed out the same broken tiles on the floor in the kitchen were still broken tiles, and I thought that's gotta be on someone's
too far.
Sounds
too far on the opposite
of whatever sort. I'm not sure. Ian, how are you doing tonight? Sound checking.
We've been just going on. Ian, how you feeling?
Yeah, good. I'm looking forward to this. This came as a bit of a surprise.
I was trying to keep the same element of surprise that I got when I showed up at Steve's door and he handed me some of them and I saw the logo on it and I had to tell him the story. Anyway, we'll get to the story. That's the fun part.
I loved hearing it, Ross. Cause like, this is you, because there's been like things have been pieced together in the industry to kind of get to this point, and a lot of people have given me a lot of wrong guesses, which has been really funny to me about what's been kind of happening and what the new kind of like what this project that's being built is and what's been happening with some of the restaurant stuff. So I'm super excited that like we get to talk about it now, because some really cool stuff is going on.
That's amazing, because I was just expecting you to tell me that I'm the last person to figure it out, and I had all of my "I am not a smart man" quotes all ready to go. Just I'm barely paying attention, Jenny. When they sent me over to fight in the Cambodia.
I did a seminar at the Canadian Beer Awards a number of years ago, and they were talking about expansions and business planning, and something that really held on to me was, when you have an idea, get it 75% of the way before telling anyone about it. And I kind of held on to that. It's just like, and so internally and externally, I've been trying to keep it until there's product coming out of the taps, and until we're able to start selling products. We've been just kind of keeping everything very streamlined and a little bit tight until we're ready to talk about it, because the worst thing is building up all this hype and then kind of having nothing to immediately check out.
You open and they say, "Okay, where's your beers?" And you say, "Well, we haven't made any yet." Have a seat.
Soon. Yeah.
How much time you got? Anyway, I am Ross. Joining me as always my co-host Ian. But tonight we're talking to Steve Crane, and we're talking about Brig Barq Brewing. And I don't know how else to say that. Okay, two things. Steve Crane is now officially the only guest brewer we've ever had on here twice.
Oh,
You're our only two-time guest so far.
I'm super excited to be back, and would like to keep the record going. So if anyone gets up to 2, have me on for 3.
All right. Well, as soon as that that benchmark happens, but. The backstory for us, for Ian and I, that is on Brig Barq, we saw an announcement from up the road from me is the Port Pub, and they made a quick little Instagram announcement that just said, "Hey, we're announcing that the on premises is going to be the Brig Barq brewery," and we said another brewery. Oh, okay, because because there was one, and then there wasn't one, and now they're making another one. We're really excited about this. So. I tried looking at things up on the internet. This was like maybe 2-3 months ago, and I didn't find anything. So eventually we just decided that's it. We're going in, we're sitting at the bar, and we're going to ask all the servers. We're going to say, hey, what's this about Brig Barq Brewer? Can you tell us anything about what's going to happen? And all of them pretty much said the exact same thing. They said, really? No idea. No, they kept saying things like, they were in last week, but and I'm like, who's they? Tell me anything, just something.
Cool.
So then when
it was working, generating the hype.
And I caught up with you again at the Science of Beer event that was down at the Discovery Center, and I just said, hey, it was good to see you again. And we kind of, I think we chatted a little bit about the technical side of everything, and then you reached out to me, email or something a couple of weeks ago, just said, hey, I do have a new project, so I'd like to come and talk to you about that. And I said, oh, that's great. And in my mind, I was just really happy to have you back in the show, because I love talking to you about how everything in Nova Scotia and the craft beer scene is going. And then he said, yeah, and I've got a bit of product for you to pick up. And I was sort of, oh, I wonder. And I was a little curious. I thought, oh, okay, he's working on a little project, this kind of thing. And I showed up, and you hand me these cans, and I looked at them, And I don't know what the look on my face was, but I saw the logo that I'd been searching and hunting for information on, and I looked at you, and I think that was it. I only had one word, and I just looked at you and said, "It's you." All the pieces suddenly came together in that one moment, and I felt kind of like an idiot, but I was also too excited to care.
It was like such a positive weight was lifted off your shoulder. It was just like everything kind of pieced that one, like that final puzzle piece. You found it under the table and were able to put it in, and now the picture looks really beautiful.
Not a zebra, it was a dachshund the entire time. There, look at that. Anywho, we had a lovely time just in at the Port Pub anyway, talking to the staff who I don't think they were sworn to secrecy. They just hadn't been let in on all the details just yet. So, Brig Barq, official release, would you say, or official move-in, opening, selling was maybe a week ago? I'm seeing a few posts from a week or two ago.
Yeah, so this past weekend, so very late Friday, all of the licensing came together. So we figured, why wait? We have product. We have a beautiful space in Windsor. Let's launch. Let's do a soft launch and just start inviting people in, generate a little bit of buzz, and slowly just start working out from this Windsor facility and start just supporting our local industry and local customer as well.
I will be blaming you if this is like too good or right up my alley and hits all of my flavor, my palate's just right. I will be blaming you for my inevitable bankruptcy and homelessness.
Okay.
Because it's just up the road and it's just perfect. And oh man, what if I have to drink lots of this?
Well, I went the other day with my family to the port just to check it out. Beer was on tap. And then I went out on Wednesday, and it was burger and a pint night. Didn't know it was happening. And I think I'm right there with you, Ross. I think they're going to take all my money for the food because the Stars Point burger was right on point. And then I got to have a lager with it that I made. And what I like to do with my product is I think about beer. I get paid to think about beer. And when I'm not paid to think about beer, I still kind of think about beer and the industry and how it all applies. And if I can take a product home or go out to a restaurant and order it and not think about it at that time, I know that I'm doing something that I feel strongly about. And I know the customers are trying it, are actually getting a quality product. Because if I can shut my brain down when I'm having a beverage that I've made, that means you guys can shut your brain down when you have a beverage that I made. But it's going to be cool and craft and niche that when we get into these roundtables, we can still talk about all the cool things that are going on in the product. But if you've had a hard week and you just want to chill in a hot tub and eat some barbecue and have a red ale, it's going to be there for you too.
Well, so launching with five brews. We've got 3 of them here tonight. The first of which is the lager. Now, you're definitely going with the obvious. So the lager is called the lager. We're not beating around the bush here. What I'm loving, so much like a number of different cans, but I love the color motif. So you got this nice light, this pale kind of pale copper, and it's this is pretty much what it's going to look like. And now the top half of the can is nice, a cool little slant. But I hadn't noticed until just now, zooming right in there, is the actual the skeleton. I mean, there's a better word for skeleton, but the structure of the boat being built, because the whole concept, and we can talk about this as well, as the Brig and Barq is all about the ships of this region. Or the shipbuilding in and around the Minas Basin that happened probably a couple hundred years ago. That's what I tell people on the tour guide, at least. But I do like the ship side of it.
And that was something that I really enjoy, is that the brand and the people behind the business as well. The heritage goes back to the beginning of this Nova Scotia industry. They are descendants of the family that built the wharf at the Port Pub and that actually built brigantines and barquettes ships in the industry. So it's this heritage, old world industry that we're bringing back into the forefront, but with this modern industry of the brewing and beverage world as well. So it's just really cool connection that we get to do with where the province and where industry in Nova Scotia started and put a really cool spin on it. So the Brig and the Barq are the Brigantines and Barquettes that were two ships that were built at Port Williams. And that's where the motivation to source out the port pub came from as well, because we really wanted to link back to the heritage and support everyone around that's been there from the beginning.
So yeah, we are doing.
Did you already pour me here?
I've
Ross?
poured a half of mine. It's got a nice a nice healthy head on it. It's very pale though. That's I mean it's golden in my picture here, but it's.
I was thinking we were starting with the sour there.
Well, normally,
clearly,
normally you're right. We usually go the lowest alcohol percentage up to the highest, but you also know that when we have guests on, the rules are totally out the window, and it's whatever the guest wants. So Steve wanted to do this in a particular order. We're going to go lager, then red, then sour. Because it goes with the, I don't know, the storytelling, the motif.
It's basically kind of how I want to go through flavors tonight. It changes day by day.
Yeah. I'm glad. If I kick straight off with a sour after a 12-hour shift, I don't know. A lager is a nice way to start the evening, to be honest.
The palate's done after that. We'll build it in at the end.
Yeah. And sour. I'm usually okay drinking one of my wife's sours after I've had another beer or two or three or four.
Yeah. I'm glad you went that way.
That's a really nice kind of grain barley smell. Like the barley smell is coming off the top of this, which is great because you don't get that with a lot of lagers, but the smell is very palatable.
I want to slake my thirst, you see, after a very, very warm day in the shop. And I didn't want to be slaking it sour, me personally. And I think this is a great choice to start with.
Yeah.
You want that beer to roll grainy.
Hang on a minute. There is a description on the can. I'll get through it really quickly. A crisp and refreshing Czech-style pale lager featuring delicate malt flavors, floral hop notes, and a clean, dry finish. So there you are. Czech-style. Oh, that makes me even more excited.
I'm really
makes me think immediately.
Sorry,
this might have a pill quality to it. He thinks.
A which? Oh, a pills?
Oh, sorry. I'm going to space again. Because my Wi-Fi is rubbish, Steve. So if I phase in and out, it's because I'm going to satellite. I've been having problem now for about a year, so I have to go up to the satellite and back. And as a result, then live feeds are awful. I was just saying that if it's got a Czech style to it, I'm immediately thinking Pilsner rather than lager. Is there a kind of a crossover going on here?
I wouldn't so much say a crossover. This is a really great topic because this is when it starts to get interesting with how we're thinking about the brands. So technically the style is going to be called a Czech Pale Lager. Mm-hmm. But here's the interesting thing about it. What's really cool about Nova Scotia is that we've been introducing all of these different beers and beer styles to it. But what I've found success in accessibility and palatability is taking kind of the box of a beer style, but Nova Scotia at times exists outside of those boxes. So It's not a Czech Pilsner, it's technically a Czech Pale Lager, but the hops and the bitterness are actually outside of the recipe stylistic box of it. So the closest thing's a Czech Pale Lager, but it's been adjusted to Nova Scotia sensibilities to make it an easier version of it. So it's in this kind of window where like the build of the beer is closer to an American lager, a light or a pale American lager, but we're using a Czech yeast because I really like Czech yeast and it has that crispness to it. It finishes nice and dry. It's good and sharp. It's really wonderful for a lot of other styles and is a workhorse in the brewery as well. So kind of like from production and flexibility, but final product, I really like it. So it kind of fits but doesn't fit the style of beer, but it's much lighter in say hops and finish than a Czech Pilsner. But I did want to go back, on the Brig Barq side, we're going back to like the beginning of an industry. And so when we started to do a lager, I'm like, I want to go back to the beginning of lagers, and I instantly went Czech with it. And I think it's been working really well for it.
All right. I'm ready to get the snifter into this. We're all set. Ian, you good? Cheers.
Yep. Cheers. I've been looking forward to that all afternoon.
That's the perfect marketing shot right there. A good sibling. I've been looking forward to that, and that's the style of beer that we're launching with. We have a lot of flexibility in our production, and the goal is to get more into like some niche, cool, interesting, fun styles, and we're going to be able to do that. But coming at the gate, I really wanted to create that product that kind of like I'm saying I can go home with, or the people we're talking to. Like, I had a long day. I want to sit down with a burger, and I want to have that beer that just makes me go like, that's satisfying. That's thirst quenching. That's not taking over your thoughts. Like, oh, that's what I needed today. And you can just go through it, keep it easy.
For a long time, we used to just call that beer flavored beer.
Beer flavored beer.
The first two descriptive words on the back are crisp and refreshing. Ross, that long drag I just had on that pint glass was 100% crisp and refreshing. It would have been the first two words out of my mouth if I hadn't read it at the top of the can. Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Beer that tastes like beer. The line that I say is, how do you describe a beer built to taste like nothing? You don't. You go enjoy the pool or the game that's on or the barbecue. The beer's there to support what's going on as opposed to being the topic of conversation. We'll get into the cool, niche, weird stuff because I love doing that too. But for now, let's just hang out together and just have a beer and see what else is going on.
And at a 4.5, so it's not the full 5% that you get in most of the stuff out of the LC and whatnot. It's I was gonna say that I don't want to say that it's missing body. It's just it does taste a little lighter. It almost tastes like a light beer or a light lager. But again, and I also call it lawn mowing beer is one of my other favorite ways to describe it. It's perfect lawn mowing beer because I need one after about every 45 minutes.
Exactly, and that's thank you. I take that as a wonderful compliment. I did design that product to be like just a little bit lighter, so that we have some flexibility if in the future we want to bump up and kind of do like a 5%, a little bit more full bodied, a little bit more stylistic version of a Czech beer, we can.
But if you're standing around at the barbecue and you have that and you're having the two sausages and a burger at the same time, if you have something that's any heavier or like fuller body than that, you probably say, I gotta put that down, I'm gonna have that later. You can't you couldn't drink this. It's got to go with what your activity is, and this is a summer day.
Yeah, nice and smooth. That's what I've been working for.
But like I said, yep,
we're
reflects the
Steve, we're
light.
We are big fans. Ross introduced me to it. I'm not a lager fan per se. No, that's not to say I don't like lagers. It's just it wouldn't be my first choice. In most pubs, I'll normally go for a darker, maltier beer. However, Ross, a year or two back, a couple of years ago, he introduced me to. He said, "I know you're not really a lager aficionado, but here, hammer on this Toller Gold that I'm trying, Spindrift." And I was like, what on earth is this? Have I just been converted to a lager boy? It was so smooth and so flavoursome. And every time I'm now wanting a lager, it's going to be that Toller Gold. The fact is, though, it's 5%. This is 4.5%. This is a slightly lighter. It's still plenty of flavour in it. It's probably just going to, but it's a little bit more refreshing, may I say, on a hot day. Toller is wonderful. Ross was right about it. We said it was pretty much the best lager that he tasted in Nova Scotia. If there's a better one out there, we hadn't got to it yet. This is delicious.
Yeah, keep it easy.
Really easy. Really easy. It's almost gone. Oh my God, already. I was supposed to be savouring it. Ross has already done it.
Yep. Well, because there's nothing to compare it to. We're not trying to compare it to another lager and to go back to it. No need to save this one.
No, none at all, because you gave us 6 cans as well, so I don't even have to hold on. Cherishing it, because there's another can of it over there. Lovely.
You gotta give a little bit.
The bonus there is that we both Ian and I both live with significant others who are also usually interested. Oh, give me a taste of that. Give me a taste of that. So, luckily, when I brought home the sours, I said, and there's one for you. She says, ooh, and she got all excited with her own. I think she's having that right now. Actually, she's probably gonna shout down the stairs, whether she's enjoying it or not.
Yeah, and I did want to access the shareables. Like I have been that person since before I started my brewing career and into it, that I was going out and I would buy a 6-pack of the weird stuff, what's coming out, what's new, and I love to engage that side of it. And I would get like 1 or 2 of the consistent products. I have seen a shift in the industry from on the consumer end of it, but also within the industry as well from producers, is that we're trending towards the more consistent products. So more like a 6-pack of a lager or a beer. Or for myself, like I was down at Hell Bay the other day. I'm like, oh my God, I could drink 6 of these dark cream ales any day, or of their British beer. Was fantastic. But we're going more towards like the consistency product, because the industry has grown, that we're making consistent versions of styles. We've upgraded our ingredients, we've upgraded our equipment. So the weird kind of one-offs that we do aren't the driving force anymore, and we're getting all these demographics coming in that we can access. So I want to launch with products that my wife, I brew for my wife. She's my brew muse. I love her so much. She tried everything that I've tried, so I always try to keep it in her sensibilities. But I want to include everyone. So a light lager or the sour as well. Like, we're getting these demographics now that we can support outside of your traditional niche beer drinking demographic. And so we're trying to connect with everyone that we can.
I try to convert everybody I know. The Hell Bay Dark Cream Ale is one of my favorite beers I ever tried, totally by accident. It just happened to be on tap at a pub in Halifax the one night I was there. I think I had 4. I just keep bringing me this thing, and then I've driven to Liverpool to get some. But
it was fresh on tap, and I just it was that same thing where all my thoughts shut down. I got in that flavor pocket, and I was like, ugh, nothing's bothering me right now. Yep. So they hit that mark with that dark cream ale. We're just any sort of what was going on in the day, I could just shut down the day, not think about it, and it just zeroed in. It was great.
I think one of the reasons why, now I think about it, why Toller Gold hits the mark for me personally. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take the shine off your beer at all, Steve. There is a reason why I'm harping on about this, is because I find that traditional lagers, British-style lagers, which is why I never got into them, were always really gassy, really full of carbonation, and every gulp I took was accompanied by a muffled belch. I don't get that with the smoothness of the Toller Gold and their ilk, as it were, and this is in the same ballpark. It's not clearly it's carbonated, but it doesn't leave you feeling gaseous all the time. And it's smooth, and it's very, very easy. This might be a little bit too dangerously sessionable, I would say, for a lager.
Very like to be. With the carbonation as well, so one, please talk about the people in our industry. Please talk about Toller Gold. I know the guys at Burnside Brewing. I love Toller Gold. Of the 3 or 4 Tollers right now, Toller Gold is my preferred for sure.
Mine too.
But we did kind of an industry study on carbonation levels, that kind of like how we're taking the styles at Brig Barq and adjusting them, the traditional styles, to kind of a Nova Scotia taste. I've been parts of teams that we studied carbonation in the industry, about what level of carbonation works well for Nova Scotians. What level of carbonation will pour well on our draft equipment. And everything's been tailored around those numbers as well. So the product's good, but also when you're drinking it, I'm not feeling bloated. I'm feeling positive about it. The less or the more. We've been studying this for years, and we're able to bring it all together in a way that really we're working to hit all of the notes kind of from behind the scenes. We're studying not only the cool stuff like recipes and hops and yeast, but we're also studying packaging and carbonations and dissolved oxygens, and just ensuring that everything is going to hit what you're looking to drink, so it can be a sessionable product. So you're not thinking, nah, I don't want a second, I'm too bloated. Or I do want a second because it's making me feel better than something else out there.
You mentioned the yeast earlier on, going for the Czech yeast. Now, something that Ross and I were not really au fait with was the difference, the massive difference to the flavor and profile that a yeast can bring to a beer. We weren't really privy to that, were we, Ross? And we kind of found that out maybe a year ago when someone mentioned it. Now, if you... We were absolutely, but I was wondering, you were both then at Ross. You went along to the Discovery Centre for the Science of Beers. How did you get in? How deep did you go into yeast varieties? And a question really that springs to mind straight away is, what sets then a Nova Scotian specifically against, and what the demographic you're talking about there? What attracts Nova Scotians? Why would that be different from? Well, a West Coaster. Let's take it right out of the province, from 5,000 miles away, not just maritime-wise. Why would a maritimer, specifically a Nova Scotian, prefer his lager different from someone from further afield?
Great question, and my brain is going into 3 different directions right now. Yeast, style choices, but then also your customer sensibilities as well. So when we talk about Nova Scotia and a Nova Scotian beer, it's not the attempt to create a Nova Scotian style. Beer styles are retroactive. There is a governing body that judges and creates all the beer styles, and they update them every 3 to 5 years. And I am not in charge of that. I love them so much and keep giving me all the information. So we're not trying to create a new style. We're trying to take the ones that already exist and adjust them to how, on the East Coast and Nova Scotians were a little bit different. I mean, I'll say we're a little bit punk rock. I'm a little bit less now because I'm a dad. But we are a little bit, I'll say, kind of like we're talking about this Pale Czech lager. We're a little bit out of the box, and it's adjusting those flavors to our sensibilities. So why a Nova Scotian might like a product like a Toller Gold or a Brig Barq lager is because we're playing with the tradition and kind of making it our own. We've brought in these styles, but we're making them better for the people. We've listened to the people who are, I want a little bit more orange peel. I want a little bit less bitterness. I want a little bit more sessionability. Where's all the reds in the industry? Things like that, we're trying to adjust it.
Yeah.
Whereas depending on your demographics and your size of your breweries, they're making more intense or less intense things. Part of it is also where you grow up. Let's talk beer off flavors really, really quick as an example. There is an off flavor called acetaldehyde. It is green apple. It is fresh cut grass. It is allowed in small quantities in certain styles. On the West Coast, because there's so much greenery, West Coast folks aren't able to perceive it as much. On the East Coast, there's this off flavor called DMS, dimethyl sulfide, that usually has kind of a cooked corn or a vegetal quality to it that we have a hard time perceiving. But if you say someone oysters, then they pick it up. That's how I pick it up. Depending on where you are and where you're raised, it changes how you interact with things around you.
The palate that you've grown up with, I guess.
It's a product, like how people interact with a Czech pale lager. We want to interact with it a little bit less bitter. We want to interact with reds a little bit potentially less sweet and less appley. And we're just kind of taking those things into account and trying to kind of create a box outside of a box or a subcategory in production that is this Nova Scotia style without saying this is Nova Scotia. This is who you are. What we're saying is we're adjusting these things for you.
Wow, it really is bespoke to an audience here on the East Coast and purely based on feedback then of what individuals like here in the country. That is fascinating.
Heavily based on feedback, heavily based on data gathering. Like, we've been gathering data for over a decade on this industry. Really, we've been gathering data since 1982 when Granite opened. And I have this brewery generational theory about when people started and where we're at. We're in generation 5 now. And we've been gathering, at least 4 to 4.5 generations of data over the course of over 30 years now. So why not 30 years? Yeah, 30 years now. So why not apply this to something? And we can apply now. No, 40 years from 1982.
82 was 40 years ago. Yeah.
Myself. Ooh. So we're able to apply that and adjust kind of what we're doing to produce these beers where it's, oh, that's really good. What else is going on? The Stars Point burger at the Port Pub is so delicious. Oh, and there's beer. Great. That's the experience I had today. I was drinking my product that I made at the Port Pub, and all I could talk to my wife about was how good the burger was.
We used to go to we would go to the Craft Brew Showdown down at the Carlton fairly often. We've been to a few of those, and I remember the first time someone got me there saying, "Hey, there's 5 rounds of food and you compare beers." And I said, "Wait a minute, there's 5 rounds of comparing beers. That means that I get to drink 10 beers." Yes, I'm there. Let's go. And we went. And on the very first course, there was some magic happening in that kitchen and they said, "Oh, which beer do you want to vote for? You know, which one did you like best with the food?" I said, "I want to vote for the food. The best part of this round was the food every single time. Just the most phenomenal food. So if the food is that good, is good enough, I will stop thinking about beer." And that's a different kind of danger.
It becomes a full experience. And I think as producers and as crafters, you need to study and understand the trends. For a while, beer was the hero. For a long while, beer was the hero. And even within the industry as a business, like, beer still kind of is the hero. It's cool. It's rock star. It's indie. Maybe counterculture. It's all things that we discussed as a conference recently. But when we look at it, things are shifting that we need to find ways to support the industry and our customers and events and companies that have come in to support us to get to this stage. I think it's time that we start supporting them back a little bit. So let's look at, I think the PEI Craft Beer Fest is doing some really cool stuff right now. If we look at a province a bit, you know, they are now doing food and music and booths. So all the beer is on the outside, on the outskirts, so people can go and interact with those products, but then they can also go and dance and have food and talk to people and talk to industry as well. And I think that's a really great representation where, say, usually on the big stage would be the beer. Now we're down kind of in the crowd and fueling them as they get to the next stage of what they're looking to do. And that's where all these thoughts are coming from. Like, we're still there. We're still cool. We're still doing what we are. We're doing it consistent, and we're doing something like, where do you need to go today? Take us with you, and we'll be there to support you.
You just mentioned a few reds, and that's where we get to move on. Is the red themed can, the red ale, at 5.5%, so a little bit stronger. It goes the red ale. Now, it also does not say an Irish red.
Nope.
Right.
It is technically not an Irish red.
Okay.
And that's what happens right now is, like, we have our styles, and where does it exist? It's technically not an Irish red, but we manipulated the yeast that we're using, and we manipulated the grains that we're playing around with as well to create a really full flavored red. So I guess technically it's a red, but it doesn't fall in that Irish style.
Okay. Cause I think we've had an American red ale before as well.
Yeah. Technically it's an English red ale. But when you get into English reds, you more so get, you know, your ESBs and the bitters and such that you can get. So,
and that's we have some favorites down that lane.
That pulls out a lot of great flavors from things, but again, like, doesn't sometimes fit stylistically. I did a tasting with an industry colleague of mine who is a certified beer judge and Cicerone, and when he tried it, we went through the whole thing, positive comments, and something he said was, it won't win. It doesn't fit the style category, so it might not win an award because of just how it fits in the style category. But the product is solid.
Well, on the side of the can, it do saith, a rich malt-forward red, boasting caramel sweetness balanced with a subtle hop bitterness and a very smooth, satisfying finish. So that's definitely how what we like to see on things. Oh, I need to get in and buy a glass. That's what.
Now available. Brig Barq. 4 Windsor Back Road.
What
reds were your introduction, were they not, Ross, to good beer? When you suddenly realised, oh, hang on a minute, should beer have a flavour? And all of a sudden, you're going back a long time. Rick, remind me, is it Rickard's Red that was like, oh, 1 minute. This
Yep.
is quite good.
My first non-Oland export Molson Canadian beer was a Rickards Red, and that was when I realized that there was a whole nother world past this very small room I was sitting in.
So Rickards was my go-to for a long time. The first craft beer that I think I ever remember having was Picaroon's Yippee IPA. And I remember saying to someone, Yippee IPA, that's a really weird thing to call a beer. Because I didn't know what an IPA was at the time.
I landed in the same spot for a while. I'm curious. My question, while I wait for the head on this the lovely, delicious, thick head on this this red, it's up there and it's trying to go away. But I would be curious to, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. It seems like you're in on the ground floor of Brig Barq here. Did you have kind of a carte blanche, I'll make what I want, or was there sort of a focus? Did everyone come together to decide what kinds of beers you would make to start?
So, great question. A really healthy middle ground of the two.
Okay.
So, coming on, what was communicated to me was I won't say carte blanche, but the ability to take the numbers and the data that we've studied and the culture that I've studied and make the great proposals. This is what we should do. This is how we should make them. And really up until the point where it's coming out of the tank and getting into a can. I have this thing that it started off as a joke a long time ago, but has become a very, very serious thing that I rely on. I call it the Community Assurance Program. And I think that evolved into this Nova Scotia focus of product where if I make something and I really, really like it, and then I show it to 2, 3, 10 friends, and they don't, then I might be doing something incorrect. So the way I kind of did it, like I spoke at a conference earlier this year, and my topic was when is craft to craft, the study of industry and culture. And I use this example. One time, I made a German Stein beer called Meteor That Killed the Dinosaurs. I brewed it a number of times over 6 months. I used superheated stones that I got up at 5 a.m. to heat up in a fire to brew the beer. Went through this whole process, sent rocks in to the judges for the competition. I got 42 out of 50, the highest score they've ever gotten on a beer up until recently. And then hungover one day, I brewed a smash ale with 1 grain and 1 hop and mosaic hops, and I brewed it really, feeling not good on a Sunday, and then kegged it and served it to my friends. And which beer do you think they like the most? The 6-month thing that I spent all my time doing, or the one that was like, I can figure it out? They love the mosaic smash ale. Yeah. So it just Community Assurance Program was like, I love talking about this Meteor That Killed the Dinosaurs, German Stein beer I got to do. But this Mosaic Smash did really, really well. So I can brew a product to a specification that maybe I really, really love. But if I show it to 9 other people and they don't like it, then 1 out of 10 people are going to consume the product. In Barq, we talked about all these theories that were going to go into our processes and our quality assurance. So going through all the products that we did, before we put anything into cans, we roundtabled. We showed it to people who were helping develop the facility and the tap room. Our marketing, we ran by all of our spouses as well to get their theories on the people who we trust the most. So we started firing all these products out. So before I put anything into packaging, it was roundtable, and we decided, is this our product? So I had the ability to get us to a certain level and say, this I think is important for us to make. And then we sat down and said, yes, it's important for us to make, go ahead. And then this is the version of this that we think is going to be representative of Brig Barq and what we want to do. And then the other day, someone said, our IPA is 5.7. I think we should have one around 6.5. So now we have another IPA coming out in like 3 weeks to a month type thing. So we have that ability to have a lot of fun play on it as well when we roundtable these things, these ideas. But in terms of like kind of production and where we're going with certain brands and what's going to be kind of cool to do. I have a lot of flexibility. I get a lot of freedom. The people that I work with trust me a lot. They're wonderful to work for and wonderful to work with. We're all excited about it. And at the end, like we get to roundtable beers a little bit. That's super cool. But then I can also partner with a collab that I want to do this year and do a Baltic Porter. So it's the both worlds, right? Yeah, it's the best of both worlds. I love it.
Well, and the bonus is you can't have too many IPAs. You could make 6 different IPAs, but with Propeller being in the same province, you'll never have as many IPAs as they have on the shelves at one time. I'm not trying to give them a huge hard time for that, but I love everything I try from them. I mean, the Galaxy, I'm not an IPA fan, and I like their stuff. I just don't understand why there's so many different types all the time. Oh,
yeah.
Really
well, you were talking about the IPAs there. You've got a session IPA, Steve, and you've got a regular IPA. And if you're talking about getting one at 6.5, 6.6, 6.7, is that heading in towards the double IPA territory? I believe is that 7% you've got to reach or something before it's a double, or is that right?
So let's use this as a jumping off point for a few more theories here, because I love theories.
Science.
And I love analogies. Here we go. So we have a session IPA that we're carving on the table, guys. We're waiting on cans right now, so we have some on draft. We have a session IPA that we're coming out with at 3.5% with some orange peel, because, man, I love orange peel and hops. IPA right now, and it's at 5.7%.
Still be strong.
A 5.7% IPA. And the reason I like it is, we're seeing the industry and we're seeing this demographic coming out, kind of like this sour demographic came up. The non-alcoholic demographic and the low alcohol demographic is here, and I appreciate it. I love it. For myself, I love just kind of like the flavor of beer. And when I'm out to dinner with my family, my wife looks at me and is like, well, I can't have even one when I'm having a burger. But if you have a 3.5% session ale, 0.5% IPA, and you get a small one, it's like it kind of works. You kind of get that flavor. You kind of get the thing. With the 5.7%, I was talking with a colleague recently, and she was like, "Thanks for making it 5.7, because my husband loves IPAs, but they're all 7%. So we get a big hop flavor, but just make it more palatable, more sessionable, and kind of build into your life so it doesn't take over." But at the same time, IPAs, like, let's make a good IPA. Like, there it is. That's that niche quality to it. That's that craft aspect. Like, let's make an IPA. So we have another IPA. So we have a session IPA called Session IPA. We have an IPA called IPA. And we, in the tank, actually need to dry hop it tomorrow. We have a 6.8% West Coast IPA called Big IPA that we're planning on launching concurrently with the Session IPA. So we're going to have a lineup of 3 different IPAs. So when someone comes in, and even for myself, some days I want the 6.8. Some days I want the 5.7, and some days I want the 3.5. So it's like, what kind of an IPA do I feel like today? We're going to have every end of it, 3.5, 5.7, and 6.8, and different versions and styles of it. It's not the same beer done differently. It's actually 3 different, like the 5.7 one, I'll call it that kind of like that East Coast IPA, that kind of middle ground between hazy and bitter. The Session IPA goes more towards hazy and orange peel, and the 6.8 Big IPA, it's going to be West Coast. It's got two big traditional American hops into it, 6.8, a little bit of a malt bill, and it works. And that's kind of what we're shooting for a little bit, is all these demographics that are popping up. If you structure how you brew and how you release, you can build in all the pieces and fill in all the gaps for it in a really great way. And that just helps you engage with your clientele. And it's fun to do too. Like, one day I was like, we should do a 6.8% IPA. Can we do a West Coast? Sure. And then I'm doing all my spreadsheets to kind of get it done up. And that's really fun, and that's really cool. And it's happening quick. We're at this really cool part in this business that we're launching. I feel like we're doing it very intelligently, and we're managing the production in a way that we can do the big stuff when it hits, like the lager. Let's make a lot of lager. But do we want to play around with the stout in September? Of course we do. We have the tank space to do that. But we're listening. We're being flexible. The other day, someone came and said, everyone's asking for a stout, so we do it sooner, and we moved it up by a month, so we can get stouts better while still maintaining our other brands as well. So we're on this good path where we're still having a lot of fun, but doing things consistently, which is really cool.
glad there's some yearning for stout. I feel like there's a t-shirt idea right there with the different IPAs. Is you could have, the session IPA and its percentage, and then the IPA and its percentage, and then the big IPA and its percentage, and just above that in letters just say, "How was your day?"
How was your day? Yeah.
And one of these three will help you. How was your day?
Honey, I'm not gonna lie, it's feeling like a 6.8.
Yeah, it was real 6.8 today. I tell you that. Yep.
5. Let's put some burgers on the grill.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really clever. That's really fun.
The answer to how was your day? I
have started. I don't know if
You've
you
already
noticed
started?
that.
Oh, okay. You tell me what you think, and I'll take a swig.
Smell. Yeah, absolutely. It was the smell that was coming off of it while Steve was chatting away there. I've got a fan in the corner because it's really hot and sticky in here right now, and it's blowing right in my face. And as a result of that, all the bouquet coming off the beer was going right up my hooter. I thought, I'm having some of that now. I'm not even hanging on anymore. You're making the face that I just made, Ross. Reds, Steve. Reds don't normally do a great deal for me. I mean, I know that was Ross's introduction to a half-decent beer, but Reds to me normally, I find them a bit, nah. They're a bit, I don't know what's the word to use, a bit base to me. Then there's not a great deal of flavour to Reds. Usually the ones I've tried, and you said you liked Rickard's. It was the first one, but clearly that's not. It's not. And now you've had the flavours of other Reds. Now you look and you think, oh, Rickard's Red, well, it's perfectly fine, but there's not a lot going on in it. This has got like a toffee-ish sweetness thing going on.
The malt forward and the caramel is there. But not obvious, not punch you in the face, not knock you down. It's all just that very smooth, the balance, the
shock horror, another red with some actual flavour to it. Because I do find them, like I say, a bit boring. This is not boring.
Reds to me are always, this is Christmas dinner. This is coming home to an old favorite, a familiar place. This is a roaring fire on a cold night. This is, and I know I always like a nice thick, warm you top to bottom stout for that as well. But I feel like Reds to me, and maybe it's because it was kind of my first foray, but it's nostalgia, and a red will always and if it hits in just that way where you feel like you're tasting something different for the first time, but it's just bringing all of those feelings and vibes back of, I remember this. I remember when I first learned that beer could taste good.
Yeah, I'm surprised at this because Reds don't, like I was like, okay, there's a lager. That surprised me because I'm really enjoying the lager. So I thought, well, I know that I'm not going to enjoy the sour. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm probably not going to enjoy the sour, but I'm not the audience for it. But the red, I was like, oh dear, the lager was so good that the red might become might be a bit bland. It ain't.
I feel like as an industry, Reds, which is a beer name that I'll throw out there that anyone can take. As these hops became popular, and I super support where the industry is going, and where the industry is, like the hops and the different IPAs. I think they're super important and they're super interesting. But as we've gone through it, I think that we're coming back to the idea of, like we've been talking about, those beers that are simple just to support what we're doing and having that an easy day, and just the beer that kind of tastes like beer, I think, has a place that's re-emerging. It's kind of like Chardonnay in the 90s. It was like, how much oak can we put in these Chardonnays? And then it killed the Chardonnay industry for a while. I like unoaked Chardonnays, kind of. Not because of that, but I can't get it heavy into oak. And I think that we're starting to come back around to these kind of like malt-focused beers if we can dial them in a little bit. And that's why I wanted to reintroduce a red. I think also from like a food pairing quality, with having the Port Pub attached to the brand and being one of the primary draft outlets. Reds and pairings, you can hit almost any food. I think anything with chocolate, to be honest, you can really go well with a red, and so it's gonna help to boost that overall experience at a restaurant.
Richness. Yeah, it's balanced as well. It's because sometimes, I mean, even now, I might get a little bit of flavour from a red. It's gone. It's gone in an instant. This is all the way through it, from the lips all the way down my throat, and even afterwards, I'm like, it's still there. This is really nice.
Now, I had a question because you mentioned about can design and the cans on the way and everything. Are we going to see the dinosaurs killed by meteors red, or is everything going to be very the lager, the IPA,
So Meteor That Killed the Dinosaurs
That was
was technically a Belgian ale, and possibly when we get into the fun niche stuff. So when we launched our brands, so we're running kind of everything with a really nice, easy consistency to it. The thought that we put into our reds was a few thoughts. One, let's get people understanding what the brand is. It's very, very important. So separating out, say, the color and having the brand isolated on the light color Brig Barq works really well. And then when you're, say, walking up to a fridge and you see the red, the gold, the blue, the greens, you can kind of start to understand and associate with it.
Yeah.
When we did the lager PA, we were workshopping names at the beginning, and I think very, very smartly from the owners that I'm working with, because what we were talking about at the beginning is like, you get one launch, everybody gets one experience, and then if the experience doesn't hit, it's hard to get that clientele back at that time. That was something that we were very cognizant about. We wanted to make sure that we got the product to that's going to be that product. So when we started going red IPA and keeping it, the thought was we didn't want to have to launch and then say backtrack on something or have something change. Because what that does is creates an inconsistency and kind of breaks the trust with our clientele. And the clientele is the most important things for us. Without the clientele, without you guys, without you, there is no us. So it's a way for us out the gate. I feel like we hit it pretty well. But it gave a little bit of flexibility instead of saying like, hey, this is the Mariner IPA and this is the thing.
The Bloody Mary red and yeah.
But then as it happened, when the beer came out and then the cans came out and the way it was looking and the feedback we got, that there was that accessibility to it, we're like, hey, it's just, instead of saying, the analogy for it is hoppy beers again. There's a session IPA, there's an IPA, there's a double IPA at 7.5%, there's a triple IPA, 10.5%, 11. And then at one point people are like, well, let's do an XPA. An XPA is 5.5 to 6%. So now what it became is you need to know the brand, you need to know XPA, which is new. You needed to know what name of XPA you wanted to do. Then you got to figure out what ABV. It's really fun to put these things to it, but at the same time, sometimes it becomes a little bit more complicated than what we're shooting for. So by putting, hey, what's that beer? It's the Brig Barq lager. What's that beer? It's the Brig Barq brand. And that's kind of when we launched it. We wanted to keep it as simplistic and as simple as possible for our clientele to just have a fun time, to have a good beer, get a little bit of food, talk to people what's going on around. And then when we have these conversations, it's actually a Czech pale lager. It's actually a red ale, but not a red ale. It's not a really, there's no appellation to the red ale. But then down the road, we're going to talk about Meteor That Killed the Dinosaur. Then we're going to talk about the Baltic Porter. And then we're going to have these brands that we can play with and have fun with and do that style.
When there's branches away from the trunk, where the trunk is called the trunk, but then the branch can be, we tweaked. You remember the red ale that we had? Well, we've tweaked it a little bit. So this one is now called the Cardinal Red, because it tastes more like St. Louis. I have no idea where I'm going with that one, but
no, that's a fantastic description of the branches. If it's okay, I'm gonna steal that.
All right, that's fine.
That's how we're thinking. Like, we have our core lineup, and it'll always be there. It'll always be this inconsistent. But then over here, it's like, oh, we have the Cardinal Red. Well, how is that different? And then we're educating, and then we're creating that conversation. But if you just finish a 12-hour day and you want to have a burger and a red and shut down on the trunk, you can just go do that too. Yeah. And so we're starting to build that out with new programs, and we have the capability to play it around. We have the tap space. But for now, we just launched with a really cool, consistent product.
But you don't have to explain everything. Someone comes in and says, "Oh, what's a foghorn leghorn?" You say, "Ah, well, that's the lager, but we did this." And
with here,
if you've been studying,
or you just want to have a beer, just have a beer.
Good. Steve, you've been studying that data, you say now, for 10 years, whatever it was, all the feedback from the people, so to give them what they want. In my mind, in my old-fashioned mind, I'm picturing the typical lager drinker in my mind.
Uh-oh.
In my mind, I'm picturing a typical porter or a oatmeal stout drinker. In my mind now, I'm picturing a very stereotypical sour drinker. It's not difficult to picture in your minds. Who drinks red ales?
Good question.
Yeah,
I think
you had to go
true.
with, really, you had to get yourself a base. You would have had to, going into the market, you'd have had to have had, what are we going to put up front first? And you're getting into a pretty good market. So you've got to get some units sold straight away. You've got to appeal to people. You've got a lager out there. You've got a sour out there. You've got a couple of IPAs out there. And because there's markets for those things. I wonder who the typical red ale drinker, this demographic, what kind of person, apart from Ross and I, might have a red occasionally?
I think it's someone who is looking for an experience. And that's one of the reasons why it is 5.5%. What I like to do with a red, with this red and our stout as well, I'm planning it to be 5.5, is that it is more flavor. It is there. It's more present. There's more to talk about. So someone who is looking for that experience, not necessarily to talk about the beer, but who's looking for a bit more flavor. The person who's looking for a little bit more of a lager. So some nights I'll equate to food. Sometimes I want to come home and I just want to make a sandwich, chill out, see what's going on. But sometimes I want to have a little bit of a feed. I want to make like the night a little bit special.
Yes.
That is the red. If I'm like kind of embodying that red drink, it's like I'm gonna have a red tonight and I'm gonna go do something. I'm gonna have a red tonight, and what else is kind of happening? And just kind of harken back to what Ross was saying, it's like it reminds you of home. It reminds you of the holidays. It reminds you of an experience. And so I'll kind of put experience next to a red ale. And I think we're talking about like I've gotten a lot of feedback how people are like, we were looking for reds. They like reds. I think because we understand a red ale, we understand an amber ale. It's malty. We can talk about it. It's craft beer. It's craft product, but it's not crafty like a sour or like a hop. We can experience something and feel like a community with it, but still just kind of have a nice, easy drinking red ale. So I guess to shorten that up, someone who's kind of looking for that experience and looking to be part of the community, but still have just like that easy casual time.
I wish I'd written down.
You know who's drinking this red ale? I'm going to be getting this red ale, Ross.
This is
it's on your doorstep.
That is fantastic.
So
that's very good.
It really is. This is one of the most flavors. What was that one? I hate again harking back to others, but I know you clearly you're an ale drinker. You know your stuff, Steve. Was it Ross, the best red that we've had in the last couple of years? Wasn't Boxing Rock, was it? No, you're shaking your head.
Old Biddy's Great Roads.
Old Biddy's. Okay.
They have one of the most malt forward, just full bodied caramelized. The sweet the sweet toffee of it. It's almost like eating one of those Rolos, you know, with the liquid caramel on the inside. It was just it was so delicious and very, very smooth. Like the malt, it wasn't just the sweet, it was the sweet and the malt, but it was a little bit sweeter than this. So I appreciate this for what is a more core flavor to it. And I wish I'd written down my answer to who is a red drinker, because as Steve was describing it, it just got funnier and funnier to me. And you're gonna think I'm making, but I thought about it, and it started as a sarcastic answer. And who is the red drinker? And I think I've got it. Young professionals, first, second year out of school architects. You know, that kind of hipster, but not a proud hipster. I think that's who's drinking reds, I feel. And the more you described it on your end, Steve, I thought, yep, there's my young architects right there. They're
multi drinks for sure.
I feel like that's
for
the demographic.
I see.
Based on no data at all.
Well, we're seeing a very traditional drinker with reds as well, where people who have been in, say, the beer game or the craft beer game. So how do I describe this? Let me go back. We're seeing the more traditional drinker with our reds, where I used to moonlight at Battery Park Beer Bar to study. Honestly, to study. Thank you for hiring me, Battery Park Beer Bar. But I did it to study the industry, because I used to work in the front end, the retail world, and support end of brewing supply. And then when I went into commercial brewing on the back end, I realized I went from the community into living in a concrete stainless steel box, and I wanted to engage with people. And it was around that time where people coming in saying, I don't like craft beer. What do you have? I like Bud. I like Olin's. I like Keith's. I like these big buck lagers. Like, what do you like?
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting to get more and more of that demographic coming into the craft beer world. And the next thing that I think about that of the traditional beer drinker is, it'd be really cool if there was a red. This red, cards on the table, guys, like, I showed it to someone, like, oh, that's like Rickard's, but better. I'm
It
like,
is.
That's such a huge
100.
that I get, is because we're looking to access everybody. So we do have these new young up and coming people, but it's also based off of traditional macro drinkers saying, hey, this is the next thing that they're looking for from a craft producer.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of trying to hit that. And I feel like we really found that a positive product for that demographic.
I was a number of years ago, pre-pandemic, but I was at a establishment in New Minas. I won't drop too many names, but it rhymes with Best Side Charlie's. And when I was trying to find a beer, and there was nothing craft-wise on the shelf, and so I'm scanning through, oh, what am I going to consume? And I saw it. It was there. Rickard's Red. It's fine, Old Faithful. It's the most flavorful thing you've got. It's the darkest thing you've got. It's just the most non-Budweiser thing that you've got. It won't leave a sour taste in my mouth. Please let me have that beer. So she gives it to, she plonks it down. She pours it out in a glass. She passes it across the table. And before I can get my hand on it, there's this human fossil of a man sitting there. You know, the kind of person, they've chiseled him to the stool at this point. He has just existed in this shape so long. Just the oldest human alive sitting there. And he sees this Rickard's Red in a glass get passed to me, in a clear glass. And he said, I almost to himself, just kind of muttering, just saying, well, that's the darkest beer I've ever seen. I gave him several facial expressions, and then just
that was lager.
Yeah,
and we're also making the red for the next wave.
I just thought, being chiseled to this chair, obviously, yes, it is the darkest beer he has ever seen. Because he was born there.
Yes, of course. Yes,
Lived
not a
life.
craft brewery.
Perhaps not. It was a long time. I'm hoping that he's seen something potentially since. Someone walked in and just demanded a Guinness until they served him one. It'll happen. Okay, Ian, are you ready? I know you're not ready, but are you ready? Are you ready for the sour? It's sour time. Our third in our series, the Brig Barq. There it is, the sour. I'm going to go with purple, magenta, the nice purple. So it kind of tells the tale. I haven't read it yet, so I'm not quite sure. It's a 4%, so the lowest alcohol percentage of the three that we've got right now, but not quite as low as the Session IPA. However, we've now got an exceptional sour beer brewed with honey malted oats, offering a distinctively smooth texture and a balanced blend of tartness and sweetness. That does not specify fruit flavor.
Sweetness.
Just says sweet tart and honey. So the blue, the darker purple, to me implies that it's not going to be like mango apricot. It potentially blueberry. It could be anything. Hascap. I don't know. Should I know?
There's no fruit in this one.
Huh.
I would say that I was very not insistent, but very excited about putting the purple magenta on a can. And I kind of see that as a really flavorful, engaging, electric quality to it. So when I think of what's a sour, an IPA is a green. And between the three IPAs, we have various different greens. Lager is gold and light. Our session ale is refreshing and crisp, say, and smooth and cool. So it's a blue. But with this one, with the sour, like what's the sour color? And to me, like a red's a red, but what's that gap? And for me, it was a nice purple. I like a nice purple. It to me is like something bright and exciting a little bit, but with like a rich flavor to it.
But
There is a plan for 2025. Not to put too many carts before the horse. I do want to do some sort of fruit program with the sour as well as the base. Start playing around with some stuff. Maybe we want to do mango. Maybe we want to do blueberry. Let's see what we can kind of kick around.
Well, I've seen some ones that are just sort of like a basic kettle sour, and I'm not even sure what fruit flavor, but I have seen ones from a very orange flavor, like a very light, bright orange flavor, all the way to a very dark blueberry flavor. But the color of purple makes me not expect a dark purple, but it certainly puts that imagery in my head. So when it comes out this color.
So
Ross?
I want you to know, Ross, I'm putting what you just said in my brain as like my data gathering analysis brain. Because we try to compare these things. Because you first you drink with your eyes first, and then you drink with your nose. You drink with your taste buds third. So that's kind of cool to be like, maybe there's a fruit kind of thing to it. So we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves because I do want to put fruit in next year for an offer. You know,
the purple color. The very, very first sour I tried, kettle sour I tried, was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I suppose, and it was in the city. I'd already had way too much beer that evening, anyway. But I was in the Irish bar right on the corner, whose name it might come to me in a little bit, and they said, "Do you like sours?" And I was like, I don't know. They say, and this girl said it was really good. Oh, the sours! Everyone loves this new sour beer, and I was like, okay, yeah, why not? And I said, what's it a bit like? She said, well, it's very bitter. And I thought, oh, great, bitter. Well, I grew up on bitters in the UK, so this must be like an English style bitter.
Oh dear.
And then she poured me this thing on the bar, and it was, and this is why I sat here trying to remember the name of it. It's Pucker Up. That was the first sour I'd ever tried. Pucker Up, and it's this color. It's a purpling thing, and of course this beer appeared on the bar in front of me, and I was like, no, sorry, I think I've got someone else's drink, because apparently I'm supposed to be drinking a bitter style beer. And she said, no, that's the sour beer, and it was $7 or $8. Now, I like beer. I don't ever recall having a beer poured for me before, and I took one sip of it and went, I'm sorry, I'm not having that, and just didn't want it anymore. I left $7 or $8 worth of beer right there because I tried it. I'm like, this is like nothing else. It was my first taste of sour, and I think it put me off forever, because immediately I was like, this goes against the grain. This is not beer as far as I'm concerned. I know this is the way that it was traditionally brewed hundreds of years ago. This is how beers were initially started, as sours. I've read all about it. It's fascinating. But to me, there's not a lick of malt in that. And that's where I like my beer. And I haven't tried yours yet, Steve. I'm scared. I've actually bought a painkiller along with me. If this is really bad, I'm putting this peg on my ear, so that maybe it'll dull the sensation. But I'm gonna give it a go. I don't promise I'll like it, but already this is uncomfortable. But it might not be as uncomfortable as the beer. We'll give it a go.
It's not hazy either. I was expecting a little bit of haze, but it's very transparent.
Oh, that hurts.
I'm on the opposite idea of Pucker Up. When Pucker Up first came out, it was take my money, please. I would pay double for a Pucker Up. I drank a fair amount of Pucker Up when it came out. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
My wife really likes the Jamborees from Two Crows.
Oh yeah.
The Jamboree line's solid.
And
yeah,
we have a lot of those. And again, I'm nearly with Ian. I'm not exactly saying that it is an affront to God and man or anything like that, but it's not my preference in any way, shape, or form. However, the best part about doing this show is we don't force ourselves, but we try to do a little bit of everything. All right.
This is really good.
Oh, so
Thank
she had.
you.
I told you she tried it upstairs. So okay, there's the first one. Ian, are you all set for at least give it a mouthful?
I've already been very happily surprised by the lager and really happily by the red ale. This might be a wolf in sheep's clothing. This looks to me like a beer, and that's already got one upmanship on the pucker up, which looked like mouthwash.
Okay.
This looks like beer.
You
Oh,
drink with your
sorry.
eye. Let's get you comfortable so you can figure it out, right?
Okay.
Wesley, stop.
Cheers.
It's not as mouth-destroyingly sour. I mean, I have winced at the Jamboree and the Pucker Up. I enjoyed the sweetness of the Let's Jam. Breton does the Let's Jam sour, and I enjoyed the sweetness over the sour. But then, of course, then you're just drinking fruit juice, so it's not quite a. I didn't. It was something more palatable to me, but it didn't seem like it was what a sour was supposed to be. So this is somewhere in between. This is something that can be approached by sour haters. Hate's a strong word. Sour dislikers. But if my sour loving wife, which apparently is a sentence I get to say, she enjoys it as well. So that's the spectrum. I dislike sours. She loves sours, and I think that's not bad.
It's less offensive, for sure. I don't know whether or not it's. I like fruit drinks. I could. I do like fruit drinks. I don't know which way to put it. So I don't understand why I don't like the sours very much. This is not. You said there's no fruit in it, but it's a different experience for me than because I think all the ones I've had, all the sours I've had, have contained fruit. And it doesn't make sense to me why I didn't like it so badly.
Because when you put fruit into a beer, there's a few ways to do it. You can put the fruit straight in, and there's natural sugars that you should ferment out. You put the fruit in, and then you add additives that will stall the fermentation, so it doesn't ferment those sugars. But then you have, other risks of re-fermentation in cans and kegs, or you use kind of a non-natural fruit that doesn't have the sugars, and more of a flavoring, so you don't run into those risks as well. But what you can do with a well-made sour is that you get the tartness. If you have a little bit of body to it, it works. So you can still ferment that fruit out, but then the beer carries those fruits really, really well. So sours have been used for that purpose, to kind of like pop a fruit off, because it can kind of replace that kind of sometimes tart sour end of it. They also work really well because we are trying to access different demographics when we make products. So when you're talking to someone who potentially doesn't like a full malty product, or maybe likes cider or likes wine, this is a good foot in the door for it as well. And I've talked about it a little bit, like the Nova Scotia clientele, when sours came out, it was something that grew and grew and really held on. Like, I find the sour community is, for the numbers that they have and the numbers that I've studied, like, they're very vocal and they're very passionate about it. And that was something when I looked at it, I was like, and the time that we were launching, kind of in the summertime, it's like, this is something that we should kick off right away, because I support it.
Yeah.
And it's not going away. And I don't think it should go away, because in my top 3 beers, if I had, like, my Desert Island beer is a light lager, because it's a light lager. Cool. I got other stuff to worry about. I'm trapped on an island. But my top 3 beer, if I did a Desert Island beer, would be lager, sour, and then a Baltic porter. So I'm excited to brew them as well. It's something that I'm very passionate about.
I find that, especially drinking something this different, I start to try to focus really, really hard on what all of my senses are telling me. And I've heard somewhere where someone says, oh, the different parts of your sour taste and your bitter taste, those are all just a myth. I don't care what they say, because certain sour beers, the ones that we find that are overly sour, I am getting this this tension at the sort of the sides of my tongue. Feel like they're going stiff with tension, and just around like your molars, and it's just kind of it's way at the back, going, oh, what is happening? This one, and I've tried taking the full mouthful and whatnot, but the entire mouthfeel, it is containing itself to the top of my tongue, just there. It's not it's not getting into places that are that, you know, where you have a really sour candy and it just tweaks your muscles down towards your neck, going, oh, what's going on right now? But it's just leveling there and saying, here we go. So it's what I always call a non-intrusive beer, because you can have an IPA, even, you know, single malt, single hop, or a double IPA or anything like that. But if it's just that too much, and I don't know why the sours and the bitters seem to hit me the same way, but if it's overly hoppy, it will get me in the back of the teeth, and with that discomfort at the back of the teeth. But this one, it isn't uncomfortable. So I don't know how good of of a compliment that is, but for a non-sour drinker, I force myself to. I excuse Ian from drinking sours most of the time, and I usually get my wife to come and try them with me. And I said, "Oh, good, I've got some sours." Ian says, "Oh, I'm out. I'm out of here." But we try some of those, and I've tried to just figure out the best way to describe and appreciate it, because it is a recognized beer style. So it's like a contractual obligation, but I feel like it's part of it. It's part of the Nova Scotia craft beer scene. I don't understand how it's still considered a beer, but it is. So we got it.
Funny enough, Steve,
So
you mentioned
Ross, is that what's cool about that, Ross, is that right now, with your wife popping in and giving the thumbs up, you actually have your own micro community assurance program. And that's kind of what we do. Like, you think this is the thing, and you shop it around. It's like, no, this is the thing, and this is a really good version of the thing, and that's the important part of it.
You mentioned cider, Steve, halfway through 2 or 3 minutes ago, that people that like sours might also be cider drinkers or wine drinkers. That, to me, is probably the reason why I find this less offensive than the fruit sours I've tried. It's not a pear, don't get me wrong, but I really like pear ciders. And this, to me, I'm not saying that they taste similar at all, but there is a certain, I can't put my finger on it. It's closer to a cider than a beer to me, and I do like ciders a lot. I'm given to this. I'm okay with this. I'm not going to say.
I'll take it. Take that.
Right. This is. So, if you could take it as an absolute a compliment of the highest order, from me personally, this is least offensive sour I think I've had on your show, Ross.
You've had two drinks of it. That's a half glass. That's way further than ever before, I think. You're getting through. Well done.
When I was going through the wine industry and I was going through the wine world and kind of understanding that, I couldn't get into red wines. Red wines were something that I found potentially abrasive and not accessible for myself. So I went through white wines, I went through rosés, and then at one point I found a really great style of red wine that worked for me, and one that I could say understand. It was palatable. When I first tasted it, I was like, oh, the same thing. Oh, this isn't so bad. This is actually kind of a good version of it. And then when I found that one product and that one style where like I could start to appreciate the nuances, then it actually opened it up. Then I started to understand, like, oh, I'm doing a big old steak tonight. I'm going to get me a nice Barolo. It's going to be delicious. But sometimes it just takes that one to kind of unlock just the palatability of it. Because, and like I just to look back at, everybody gets one. You get one launch. You get one release. If you have a set, oh, I don't like sours. I had that once. I can't do it. And that's always in the back of your brain a little bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes
and that's not fair. I realize that's not fair. I realize that is unfair of
doing
me.
this on a regular
should not-
basis forced us past a lot of prejudices. And I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm thankful of
I should
myself for
not-
tooting my own horn, but I like that we do this and we force ourselves to say, because over the years we've always said, don't like IPAs, they're too hoppy, we won't try them. And then finally we said, well, we've tried everything else, we have to try the IPAs, and we try groups of them at the time. And I now I have a top 5 of the IPAs that I do really like, because there's such a spectrum. Sours are exactly the same way. There's some of them my wife says, this is really great, try this, and I'm sort of, oh my, here we go. And I said, oh, I have to run around, I have to do laps to run off the sourness. But other sours are more on the sweeter side of things, and I think I would have a second one of these. Bring it on. This is actually quite nice. There's a couple a mojito sour and a pear, like Ian mentioned, the pear flavoring. Pear out of Roofhound. They've done a couple of sours, and I liked both of those.
Yeah.
They don't all hit the same way, and it's kind of fun to explore. Because not to keep
I should.
crapping on ciders, but I went to a cider tasting event and got bored. Because there's 4 flavors. There's not that much outside of it. And I think, oh, did you think that last one was a little dry? Well, this one is a little bit more dry. Ooh. Be still my beating heart with your cider flavorings. I love the fact that it, and we looked down the list of everything that was judged at 2024's Canadian the Beer Awards in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I looked down the list of everything, and I went, oh, it's so fun, because each of these there's such a drastic difference. And here's this kind of beer and this kind of beer. I love it's very viva la différence. I love the diversity, all the different kinds of things that you can try. You say, I like craft beer. Have you tried them all? Kinda. We're working on it. We're getting there.
Also, shout out to Boxing Rock for taking home Brewery of the Year. Awesome pickup. Thanks for being such a great representation of Nova Scotia craft, guys.
There's some great awards, and we had some of the award winners in weeks after that. Trying to remember right now, but
Ross,
yes,
I had a full can of this, and I'm not cheating. I did actually put the whole thing in there, and there's not that much left.
We're hitting milestones. We're changing lives. We're changing palates. We're changing sensibilities. That's great.
Steve, it's never going to become my go-to beer, a sour. But like I say, this is, and also I do get the whole. Even though I'm a bit freaky and that I could drink an oatmeal stout on a hot summer's day, Saturday on the day, no problem at all. I realise there is a place for sours. There is a place for all of these different varieties of beers. They're not all my favourite, but I realise that I don't want to have a big, thick, rich stout or a porter on a hot summer's day. I don't necessarily want a sour either, but if someone gave me that now, I might just take that over a thick malt-forward stout. It's probably the best sour I've had in our evenings. I'm drinking this. I'm finishing this.
So the hero of this beer, sometimes I wrestle with how much to give out, but the hero of this product is on the side of the can, and I put it on the side of the can because I want people to know how good this ingredient is. There is an ingredient called honey malted oats. You have malted oats, you have honey malt, someone did honey malted oats. And what's great about the honey malt is that kind of like how we have like big hops and big bitterness or like big acidities that we've been talking about, you also have like bodies of beer, and you have these, caramel and toffee style malts that give body and fullness to a product, but add like a really heavy flavor to it. And it works well. It works well in stouts and reds and extra special bitters. When we're getting to say like a sour, or a colleague of mine uses them in IPAs, and it's where I got the idea from because he makes very delicious IPAs. is that it adds a fullness and some. It doesn't add sugars that won't ferment or attenuate and create like a heavier product, but it maintains a fuller flavor so that when we put it into a sour, we get a honey malted oat, you get a silkiness of the oats that makes that acidity smooth so it doesn't get the back of your teeth like you were talking about, Ross. And then we put the honey onto it, it actually balances out the sharpness and the body of the acidity to make it kind of a triangle, a more palatable experience because you have a silky, full-bodied, subtly sweet flavor, but not heavy texture on the acidity of the sour as well. And that's why I feel this beer works so well, and I very much enjoy it. My wife, her name's Laura. I love her. She stared me in the eyes. I trust her a lot. One day she said, Steve, maybe not show me Belgian beers because they're not my style. I gave her that, and she's like, that's the best sour you ever made. So
And
That's funny because I would have thought
that's
you would
trifecta.
you would really go for Belgian beers. I thought if you like sours so much, Steve, the lambic bitters that Belgium produces, those strong Trappist monk ales, are so bitter and so sour that, and weirdly, I kind of like them. So I really thought they would have been up your alley.
Oh, so sorry. I love them. It's my wife that she's like, you know what? Belgium's not her style. She loves sours. For myself,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and this is kind of how it turned around where I could drink Belgians for life. But I bought a box of like specialty big craft beers that were, a guy had a cellar he was selling, and I had 750 milliliter wine bottles of these big oat bruins and Belgian imperial stouts and aged and like lambics, and I'd crack it over like, babe, try these, and she's like, I love you, but they're not my styles. And so I was just sitting there with a big old wine bottle of it in the end. And that's when I started to, that was another theory that I started to have, where even sometimes when people are passionate about it, and like we fell in love over food, she's tried everything that I've made, good and bad, and I trust her palate second to only mine in the world. But at one point it's like, yeah, I get it, but at the same time, give me a sour that I like, give me an IPA that I like, and give me a lager. That's her three styles. And so with this sour as well, when I kind of built it, I was like, we need to make it accessible. We need to find the non-sour drinker, and to expand that into our line, we need to find the non-craft drinker and make something where we can be like, you know what? I don't hate that. And that's a huge compliment if someone can say, I could drink more of that. And we've been getting that feedback from our community assurance program and people who help build this space as we've been testing it. It's, yeah, I could do that for sure. And that's what we discovered today with the sour.
but the flavor net is so wide. The palate is that the sour lover comes down. She does not come down that often. She does not come to be on screen all that often, but she had to be here. She's, and I have done the thing where we said, oh, we're trying this. Oh, this tastes like a sour. It's a fruity, hazy beer. She might love this. And I take it upstairs and she spits it back. Nope, that's not it. That is not it. So she came downstairs to agree that we all, on a very wide scale of palate, we're all kind of, yes, this sour is quite agreeable.
And that's a great representation of what myself and Brig Barq as a company we're trying to shoot for is, if we want to be craft and we want to engage, say, that sour drinker, the sour drinker is going to be like, this is a really great version of it. But we're building a product as well that is also going to access the people who maybe don't like a craft beer or don't like a sour or haven't gotten onto the red or the lagers yet or any sort of style. We're going to make it so we can talk about how it's a Czech pale lager and it's super cool. But at the same time, we're going to have those people who are like, don't really like craft, but I dig this as well. I don't like sours. I'll drink it. And the sour drinker is going to be like, this is so good. That's like, it's a perfect representation.
I was about to say, may I just jump in there, Ross? It just occurred to me, and I don't know why it's taken so long to occur to me. And
You love
the fact
sours
that
now?
I'm actually drinking this, that's better. No, that's not what I'm about to say. It's this, that this is a lager is a style of beer, and you're going to get roughly the same, just on a variation of lagers. Red ale would be the same. Obviously, yours is maltier. It's got more caramel to it, etc. But it's a style of. Sours, seem to be so diverse. Yours just says sour, and there were so many different flavors of sours that I've tried in the last couple of years, etc. It just occurred to me, just because one person says, I don't like a sour beer, I'm kind of understanding that. You say, you might not like this sour beer, but you might like this sour beer. If someone says, I don't like lagers, generally they're going to not like most lagers because they are in the same ballpark. I'm kind of getting the idea now that sours aren't the same thing. Am I right or am I wrong?
Sours are incredibly diverse. I mean, depending on how beer nerd you want to get it into it, is lagers are super diverse as well. But lagers, I feel, are more process diverse and there's more subtlety to lagers as well. Sours are hugely diverse simply because of the process that people do, and the ingredients come out, I find, a little bit more powerful on them as well. And depending on what kind of the scientific gets a bit more complicated that I got a bit of a handle on, but there's a number of different acidities that you can get and kinds of acid that you can kind of pop out depending on what your process is as well. You know, if you're doing a kettle sour, you need to keep your temperature, your oxygen saturation as low as possible, and your bacteria culture as healthy as possible. So there's a lot more variation to it as well. But with sours, I think that we haven't, in Nova Scotia, I'll say, we haven't really done a huge deep dive on some sours industry-wide. Everyone has a lager now. Everyone has a lager 355, say. Everyone has an IPA. Everyone came in and focused on certain styles. Good chunk of them. For sours, they've only really been, people have been vocal, but they haven't been hitting and widespread until the past couple years as well. So we're kind of coming into what I'll say, sours have proven themselves a little bit. And so I feel we're going to start seeing a bit more diversity in what we're kind of playing around with these products. But at the same time, we need to make them palatable and easy to drink. And that's what we're shooting for on these ones. I hope that answered I kind of diverged a little there.
A friend of mine lives, he lives here now in Nova Scotia, but he was actually living in Oakland, California for a number of years. And he's a big sour fan. I've had him on here drinking sours with my wife and I, but he attended something called Sour Fest, which was a Southern California craft brew sour fest. So I think, and I'm thinking, I'm listening to you talk and saying, are we 2 to 3 years away from Nova Scotia Sour Fest? I think we might just be. There's a small festival. It's probably bigger than I actually think it is. I was just reading about it today, and it is the Fundy beer. Where is it? The Horton Ridge is the Beer Fundy Festival. It's happening this weekend. So just this coming weekend, and that's going to be a thing. But again, that's all beer. So I would love to attend Stout Fest. You know, I would go to Red Alesville, or I don't know, Porterpalooza. Let's invent these things. Let's just start coming up with stupid names for things and just creating a festival.
Porterpalooza.
I'll go to
Porterpalooza. I love it.
I think, and I'll fire this out to the industry as well right now. Sometimes I kind of keep ideas to myself because I think they're really cool and I want to be the first guy.
You already said it. You already said it. You got to be 75% of the way there before you even mention an idea. I am a 10 to 25% kind of guy. I spout things off the top of my head. Hey, what if we had a this? And I'll shout it to everyone I know.
We can pick it up. We can do this. I'll fire it to the industry. What I think is really cool about what you're talking about, Ross, right now is the application of it is tap takeovers. So if tap takeover were called Red Alesville, and you have, say, 10 or so breweries, just put a red ale or an amber or an ESB. If you're organizing brewers, hey, your standard reference method, your SRM beer color is between 14 and 20, and that's
try
those
beers.
Porterpalooza. We're doing porters and stuff, and just if it was a host, let's say here at 834 Windsor Back Road at the new Brig Barq facility where we have 16 taps available of beer, cider, vodka sodas, and wine. One day, what we could do is an event, be like, we'll do Porter Palooza, and then we can just put on 16 porters from the industry, because there is new support coming from alcohol and gaming, where we can start selling other producer products without having to adjust licenses, which is really cool. So that would be, I'll fire that out to everyone, is like, stylistic tap takeovers would be really cool, and we have the ability to do it now.
I was talking to Ian Smith of Tapestry Beer Bar down in Sackville, and I feel like I know exactly what he'll say if I suggest this. And he's more of an IPA fan. He'd probably be happy with an IPA takeover, but I think he'll say that I feel like there isn't the population in even mainland Nova Scotia, or even somewhere specific. If you even had it within HRM, I don't think enough people would turn out to a just one single style night. Because what Ian did, he did a New Brunswick takeover, and it was a little bit of lights, a little bit of medium, something in between, all the way up to the really, to the darker stuff, and then some curious IPAs in the middle. And I thought that was the way to do it. But without a big population of everybody, if you had a red state and everything was a red, but just very similar, I feel like that might not hit. I love the concept of it, but I just don't think we've got the population to support a tightened diversity like that. It's the only way I can think of to put it, is a tightened diversity. You want to get everyone to try things, they're like, oh, that's kind of like this, but it's only 1% more bitter than that's the red from two islands out in Parsboro, but it tastes very similar to the Boxing Rock Temptation red. And oh man, sometimes I can't even tell them apart, and I'm trying real hard to find different ways of describing absolutely everything, but if they're so similar, it might surprise me. It might surprise and impress me. I'd love it to.
I need to make a move, because these 3 beers have taken their toll. Thank you, Steve. But you just said "Vive la différence" about 5 minutes ago, Ross, and it brought me in mind. You're probably aware, it probably hasn't escaped your attention, that the Olympic Games are on right now in Paris. I know you, being a massive sports fan, Ross, you'll have been all over that, I'm sure, from dawn till dusk. Anyway, we've got 3 beers. We've got 3 beers here, and if I may give them the bronze, silver, and gold. Yes. It's very difficult, because they are clearly very different styles of beer, and I'm only going on what I like. But in keeping with what Ross tends to do, he tends to pick, when he says he doesn't like sours much, or a certain type of ale very much, but he still recognizes that that's one of the best of that style of beer, or a poor offering from that style of beer. So he tends to do that. Well, this is going to blow your mind, Russ.
Are you giving the gold to the sour?
I don't know. Anyway, in bronze, even though this is the best lager I've tried for a long, long time, and it might just be competing with Tola Gold. This is delicious. I kept back this little fingerful because it's so good.
Yeah, I think it gets my bronze as well for the night.
I love it. I love the lager. I'm going to take because this sour, because I don't like sours, but this sour I can drink this sour. So up there on the silver podium, I think that's called a podium, is it not?
Same. Oh, well, all 3 podium finishes. I think that's pretty good. But
they're all 3 podium finishes.
But
I'll take that.
This red is so full of flavor. It's so sweet and caramelly. And reds for me are usually so lackluster. This is superb.
I don't know how many reds I'm going to get you to compliment before you finally say they're not boring anymore. But I'll find some more.
I love it. I'm out of here. Good night.
Thank you for the kind words.
I'm just looking up the location here. 834 Windsor Back Road, you said?
Yep.
Repperidge, Flooring. That's near 3 Mile Plain, so that's on its way out. That's so from the very southern, the 5 Mile Plains, there's a sneaky road to Martok, I call it, across the southern edge of of Windsor there. I'm there a little bit with my daughter, but yeah, I will wander in there, as well as, I mean, I'm just up the road from the Port Pub, so I'll certainly be in there here and there. And I need to pick up my traditional pint glass. I've got a nice glass from just about all the breweries that I visit, so I'll have to come in and get a Brig Barq quite soon. Steve, I can't thank you enough. I can't be more happily surprised, I think, is the best way that I can put it, that not only is there another brewery coming to town, but that you have a huge part of it, a stake in it, and a big piece of the production. And thank you so much for introducing us to 3 of these beers. There's 2 others released at the tap rooms in Windsor, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Port Williams as well. Are they on tap, or don't let me lie.
We have. So the Session IPA is coming on tap soon.
Okay.
And right now we actually have a Session Ale, which is a 3.5%, just really light style beer that I've been kind of playing around with. It's kind of just an interesting release, just to kind of see what we can kind of do with it. That's on tap right now at the port, and we're gonna have on tap at Windsor Back Road soon.
So so of the 2 locations, the beers are available, and then the cans. All 5 are coming along soon. 3 certainly available thus far, but look forward to more and more from Brig Barq Brewing. And if you check out, I found it eventually. It was, oh man, here we go. Brig and spelled out Barq, BARQ.ca is the website to find out a little bit more from Steve Crane and those people. But Ian and I will be back as we are every week. So we'll see you next week here, same time at live 8 p.m. on our YouTube site, youtube.com/@DrinkNSDry. You can find our podcast at all the podcasty places. Drink NS Dry, Drink Nova Scotia Dry, something like that. There's an Instagram page, there's an everything page. Look us up. We're exactly there. We're the only ones who've called ourselves that. But thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Have a good one. Thank you.